Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we have our new episode based on climate change. We have our many speakers from around the world. We have Mr. Michael Rana. He is actually generating Industry 5.0. It's very popular around the world. We have our Mr. Marshall. We have our new friend Mr. Walker from London, as well as we have Mr. David Schumacher and Mr. David Smith. Thank you for joining today's sessions. First, I would like to give chance Mr. Michael Rada for discussing these climate change issues.
Yes, so generally climate change, I think it's here. It's my view of 50 years old man who see that it's a different pattern in the sky. In the winter there is no snow, so I see it. But what I don't see the direct possibility in changing the climate by ourselves so simply. So we can change our behavior, and this is important not only because of the climate, but because of the destruction. But I don't think that if I stretch my hand outside of the window, I will feel 1.5 degree difference. And that, I think, is one of the topic that the people, why the companies do not reflect to the need of changing the behavior, let's call it so. But I think the change is here. I think it will be here without us as well, maybe not so fast. But I don't think that when I see in a company right now, climate change managers, I would like to do this job. You don't have to deliver nothing, just papers, because you will not influence. But if you will really change the company, which you can, I think, you can do it with the change of your behavior. And this is what is generally missing in many. So from my point of view, climate change is here. It exists. I accept it. And we can change our behavior to slow it down, maybe, or to survive on the planet without a bigger sacrifice in number of people or land or similar. So that's my point of view on climate change.
Okay. Besides that, you have Industry 5.0 initiative. We know it's very popular in social media. So if you share some of your view about Industry 5.0.
Industry 5.0, many people in the world consider that it's the next stage, or it's a next stage of Industry 4.0. No, it's not the fifth industrial revolution. It has nothing to do with it. It's the first industrial evolution. This is a big difference, because every revolution started with shooting and killing, but evolution was here for millions of years and will be here. And this is what I see as a big difference. And it's based on the principles of systematic waste prevention, because there is one big advantage. Every single one can prevent waste happen, no matter whether he is young, old, educated, non-educated, where he lives or she lives. But we can prevent waste happen. And in Industry 5.0, we recognize and prevent 4 types of waste, which is a physical, everybody does understand the trash. Social waste, which are people who cannot live meaningful life, but even animals. And then urban waste, these are empty buildings, factories, or unneeded new constructions. And there is a process waste, which you will find everywhere, in a bank, in a school, in mine, everywhere. So generally, Industry 5.0 is new global ecosystem. And this is why it's resonating so strongly. At the moment, we have ambassadors in 98 countries, and we cover 87% of global population with access to the data. So this is what we do, and we do physical change. So we are not speaking about it. We deliver the change and then speak after it. So I am doing it for 9 years, and I have stopped myself 1 million metric tons of products to become waste. And excellent. If I can do it, everyone can do it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Michael. Actually, World Talent Economy Forum very much action-oriented. This is our 528 episode. We have our School of Talent Economy, where we train people from around the world. And you know that Malaysia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Asia Pacific, Middle East. We are contributing with a lot of community. We are working with grassroots level people. We are developing startup ecosystem, startup village. Millions of people actually joining with us. We have our another world famous professor from Malaysia, from UKM. She is exceptionally very good researcher scholars. She has like get her degree from University of Cambridge, from Stanford University. Now she is professor UKM. So Professor Dr. Raja, can you share your views about climate change? And if you share some of your experience from Malaysia, because we have people from around the world, from USA, from Europe. So how you developing the startup ecosystem? Do you have any startup for solving climate change? Professor Dr. Raja, can you unmute, please?
Yeah,
Yes.
hello. Very good evening here in Kuala Lumpur. Well, the only rose among all these gentlemen is 10 o'clock, yeah, evening in Malaysia. Thank you very much
Yes.
for inviting me. I feel so humbled to have, very senior, intelligent people around us. Yeah, perhaps today, maybe what I wish to get myself connected to all of you is on the idea generation from plastics, yeah, waste, because Malaysia is actually among the top in ASEAN country that have a lot of things, but how we could monetize and get opportunities, because currently, maybe, is it okay if I can just have a very quick share on
Yes.
maybe some of
Yes,
the,
you can.
how do I go about this? Share screen, right? Let me give a try. I hope it
Yes.
works.
Yes.
Is it visible to all?
Yes. I'm sharing.
Yeah. Present. It was kind of like very quick, yeah. So I just get myself a preparation for all the things I've been speaking quite number of things last year, yeah, on this climate change webinar for young people. So what we do maybe today to get yourself engaged into what perspective we have here in our country. Yeah, maybe before I move on, a very quick one on my international sustainability research project that I've been working on with UNESCO, UniTwin, and also Ministry of Education in South Korea. Yeah, and another part of the Europe country, Eureka University in Switzerland, and also involved in artificial intelligence project in Singapore. And interestingly, we have also get Palestine, our sustainability ambassador, that forms Center for Sustainable Development in Gaza University, Palestine. So I'm part of the Impact Youth Sustainability and Ambassador of Sustainability. So on the quick engagement, perhaps I can just keep this. Yeah, so maybe I would like to get your attention to the circular economy of plastic itself. Yeah, and how we go about having zero single-use plastic. This is one of the way and effort to get awareness among people, and how could we come up with idea generations from those plastic waste and business ideas. And perhaps I can just have a very quick conclusion. So I think everybody is aware about today, right? The packaging material flows, they are largely linear. We have about 78 million tons, yeah, annual productions, and year by year it has been like so increasing, and this is alarming. Yeah, so the circular economic for plastic here is one way after another. We can design maybe the usage of those materials, yeah, that not use up from the outset, right? And then the system should be designed to ensure that there would be no material are lost, no toxin are leaked, yeah. So we have a lot of problems if you are not countering this. So Malaysia is one of the highest consumer of plastic in Southeast Asia. So this is according to, I must say, a common report from WWF, right? So what happened is that take a look at the number of things that we have been producing. Right, Malaysia recorded an annual per capita plastic consumption of 17 kg per person. Right, so this is higher than Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Right, so all the activity in terms of the purchasing, takeaways, food, so they have been using high degree of plastic packaging. Yeah, so either to store or even to transport the food. So we also take a look into the context of the proper recycling system, which is not being utilized up to the best. Yeah, so there are a lot of things people talk about the EPF, right? Extended Producer Responsibility. So as what being proposed by WWF, it has a lot to come back to understand about the impact. Yeah, perhaps financial statements mandatory for all this in terms of large scale systematic collection, sorting, recycling, and so forth. Yeah. So maybe interestingly, we can take a view, but I'm not going to go this. Yeah, if you happen to view, it's scary to see the plastic problem in Bangkok. Same goes here in Kuala Lumpur, right? So maybe the awareness of this EPR, yeah, should be tackling by the policy in the country to take a look on the policy tool that hold all the aspect of the manufacturer responsibility. They should be accountable for the end of life impacts of their plastic product. So in that case, perhaps we can just have a very good ways of understanding the formal and informal management. Yeah, so this is Malaysia. Some of you, if you're not familiar, we have several states in the country. I'm currently here in the East Coast area. This is one of the state in Kelantan, right? So, but my family reside here, so I travel weekly, flying from Kuala Lumpur to Kota Baru, yeah, in East Coast area. So if it is by road, it will take 8 hours. By flight, is only 1 hour. So understanding the formal and informal management is critical. Yeah, so in this area, this is where we have been, getting ourselves close to the provider of this, material pickers, right? Alam Flora, Idaman, for example, these are all privatized organization that has tackling all the recycling and environmental protections, yeah, that helps along the line. So plastic waste management in terms of the disposal parts, you see a lot of things can be done to recycle the materials. Yeah, perhaps change that into pellet or resin. Of course, it requires a lot of investment, but maybe the process of mechanical recycling can help to get the green concept, yeah, around the use. So the wash flake for shredded raw material, as you can see here, right? So these are the things that some of the startup technology in Malaysia have been producing, yeah, and they came up with a lot of interesting point to take view about how we can go see, yeah, the usage and startup and new business model. So this is the thing we are educating young people as well. Yeah, we have bins whatsoever in schools. Yeah, we provide those activity, drop-off points, and even create more awareness for separation at sources and environmental impact for plastic packaging. Right, so those is actually product that came up from the recycling granulates at the processor, yeah, in these particular organizations, and even right, we turn that into affordable housing. Yeah, so I think this example, though it is not really established well in Malaysia, right? This has been taken from the Mexico. Yeah, EcoDom innovates affordable homes using recycled plastic. If you ever been to Jakarta, right, they even have this sort of nature. Yeah, but in Malaysia, we have yet to exactly come up. So we learn from the best practice around the globe. And interestingly, the wearable waste, yeah, how can we learn the reuse of plastic sustainably? Yeah, so this example we extract from the World Economic Forum that individual turn the trash into clothes and accessories, and it is making really wonders. Yeah, so upstreaming those activity, the consumer good company, packaging company, plastic industry. So these are all the things that maybe can help us to understand, how could we use the model and perhaps awareness on biodegradable plastic, and from there we can create idea to generate a lot of interesting business project and make awareness to young people. So we offer a complete business toolkit, and this came up with a module, so that we can integrate a lot of challenge among young people, and the modules also can give a guide for them to understand how to go about with specific objectives and get learners bought into the class. And to see the impact, we have the entrepreneurship attitude survey, and those engagement has give a lot about how they can demonstrate a good business plan, versus their what do you call experiment. And perhaps that could give another interesting point to run the real case towards circular economy. So another great example is of exchanging 2 kilo of plastic equals to 1 kilo of rice, right? So interestingly, our friends in the Philippines have been wandering around about these schemes of swapping the plastic waste for food. Yeah. And then I think when I was in Stanford, when I was part of the Stanford Technology Venture Program, we have been getting ourselves into a lot of ideation. So a number of templates have been been working along towards engaging the mindset of entrepreneurs. Yeah, so this is a common process of ideation, and the workshop has run beautifully. And those is actually interesting part is to engage into the business model. How do they generate income from those activities, right? So the background and the case of the whatsoever. Yeah. So high impact idea generation is also one of the area that could bring us a lot about understanding perhaps value proposition canvas. Yeah, students learn a lot about business model canvas, but when we talk about value proposition canvas, there could be a little bit different because you are now exchanging things for the value. So you have a theory of change, you see, that have been introduced here. Yeah. So the rest of others, we do enterprise mentoring, having the product market fit, product technology validation. I was part of the United Nations Industrial Development Office, serving the 30 startup clean tech technology in Malaysia, and we have been working closely to all aspect of mentoring and coaching, and this form part of the activity that help them to turn ideas into opportunities and lead them to become young entrepreneurs. Yeah. So we also have market and getting to them, finance and financing strategy. Yeah, common things about digital marketing. Yeah, so today young people learn a lot. You see, they have ideas, they have perhaps product and services. So we talk about climate change. Perhaps a lot of great things can be done, but how to get into a real market. Yeah, so all this activity has give a lot of exposure to young people to understand about, you see, the legal side and even the sustainability, right? How could they achieve and establish environmental, economic, and social responsibility impact? Yeah. And have been part of this last time, the Economics and Intelligence Unit. Yeah, Malaysia stood the first, around young entrepreneurship, and even in the policy and institutional framework. And we scored the second on the Social Innovation Index. Yeah, so this has been part of our ranking, among the middle income country in the whole world. So you can see here, South Africa stood on the overall score. So Malaysia stood at the second, and the rest of others, we have. If you see, you can take a view on the image here. All right, plastic waste business opportunities. So this is the thing, right? Awareness on the issues on single use of plastics, capacity building on EPR with private sectors, youth participation in legal framework development, presentation and discussion of ideas, not for profit entity packaging recycling organizations, and we even establish social program and run activity. Yeah, so this is actually part of the program that we did with United Nations focusing on the promotion of clean energy, technology, entrepreneurship through a technology innovation competition and entrepreneurs accelerator program. So we have been working closely with the Prime Minister's office that appear to we say monitor the SDG projects around the country. And there are several startup, representative from United Nations came from Amsterdam, fly to Kuala Lumpur, and part of the activity, we do evaluation for all these startup. So the implementation performance have given us a lot of great exposure. We have a great rubric, that evaluate all these 9 performance of the startup that get themselves close to the clean tech uh, activity. So some of the notable success among school project in Malaysia, which I have led, around 30,000 young people. So we have a great record in terms of explaining their participations, and that is part of the STEM. I think you are aware about STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So part of those are actually testing young people to understand about sustainability and how can they come up with such great ideas. Yeah. So uh, yeah, I think that's a little bit about a lot of ideas that we
Thank you.
have about. Yeah, maybe on a quick share. Yeah, Sharif.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Professor, for your excellent presentation. Because from our speaker, they come from different countries, from North America and from Europe, and they can understand that what kind of initiative for climate change Malaysia government and you are from UKM, what type of initiative you are
UMK,
taking.
Sharif, not
Yeah,
UKM.
UMK, sorry.
UMK,
UMK.
University Malaysia Kelantan.
Kelantan, yes. So,
Yeah,
thank you for your excellent presentations, and you will be happy that World Talent Economy Forum actually helping different Asia Pacific countries, South
yeah,
Asian countries, Middle East to develop their startup ecosystem. June, we have a very exclusive conference with Central Bank of Bangladesh for their climate change policy development. So hopefully, because Bangladesh and Malaysia is very close in terms of economy and cultural aspects, like many Asia Pacific country take model from Malaysia. So hopefully this kind of open dialogue and open discussion can be helpful for the developing world. Thank you for your discussion and for your excellent contribution. We have our another professor, Professor Amy from Malaysia. Thank you for joining today. Mr. Marshall, what you want to add? Mr. Marshall, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm about to get in a car and drive, so I'll make it quick. I think it's an excellent show, Sharif. I think connecting the dots is important. As everyone who's watched my performance before on these broadcasts, our position is that climate change is real, just as Michael has pointed out, and I'm sure the rest of the panelists will agree. It's not about whether it's real or not. It's about what to do about it and can we do anything about it. I liked what the professor from was it UMT? Is that you said?
UMK,
UMT. I like what she said.
UMK,
Yeah, UMK. Sorry.
University Malaysia Kelantan.
Yeah, UMK. So I think what she said was very important with regard to plastics. Plastics are a bane on the earth. It's man-made. It's made from fossil fuels. The good news is what she's talking about, but there's also even more good news. We use in our projects plastic as a feedstock, as a supply, the waste plastic. Most people can only recycle certain plastics. We can recycle all the plastics and turn them all into materials that help reduce and lower environmental impacts. So we take all kinds of waste, organic and inorganic. The kind of plastic that the professor was talking about is what is known in the trade as PREF. That's pre-engineered textiles and plastics and other material. And all that can be actually handled today. That's the good news, usually through thermal conversion technology and other technologies. I'll just make the point and then I have to leave. I think that we have a great panel today. Look forward to working with everybody on this panel. And for the professor from Malaysia, just so you know, in one of the previous sessions, I was talking with Professor Talib, who's from Jordan, and he and I are connected, I believe, through the Eco Peace Middle East group. So that's quite an amazing group, and it cuts across all politics, and it's all about the science and climate issues. So I just want to congratulate you on the hard work that you're doing, and I look forward to working with everybody. I've got to leave now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Walker, what you want to add from London?
Okay, well, look, I'm not from an academic background, so I want to make that clear. I'm actually a filmmaker by profession. I make films, particularly work in the documentary space. And the two issues or the observations that I have is that as a filmmaker, we're very affected by climate change, where we're able to film, predict weather patterns and conditions to film. We no longer can. We have snow where we never had snow. We have heat and sun where we never had heat and sun. A lot of the areas that we film in, things are just very different. So for us, it's I'm just focusing on my industry. It's a pretty serious thing, and we see it. But in that process of going around the world in many countries, you see people, all they say is, it was never like this. It was never like this. We never had this temperature. We never had this rainfall. We never had this loss of crops. And particularly in Africa, third world, where poverty and issues are far more concentrated, you see the impact of it in a terrible way. So I'm sort of first-hand experience around the world of what climate issues are. But I guess where I can add a little bit of input, and obviously I'm some very distinguished people who know a lot more than I will ever do. And I think Michael Rada sort of started to talk about it, is that I'm sort of working on a program where we're writing a documentary around just food waste. We're just focusing on food waste. And as you probably know, and I'm sure you have these statistics, is that 30% of food is wasted, 30% from the value chain, from production to my plate is wasted. So everything from producing, if you take 30% of food waste, then imagine the airplane, the truck, the lorries, the trains, the cars, all that go into that, the amount of people traveling to pick food and all this, the boxes and the packets and the everything that goes with it. And then once I've finished my plate, there's a little bit left, it goes in the bin, and then that lorry picks it up and takes it away. So the entire value chain of food waste, if you took, even if you reduced it by half and did it 15%, there is incredible impact on the sort of things that cause climate change, such as heat, consumption, fuel, burning of CO2, and the power stations that we heat or make our toast and we throw it away. So I think the problem I see as a person who's not in the academic world and sort of more in sort of seeing what happens in reality, is that a lot of the focus is wrongly on industry and on multinationals and extension, rebellion extension, blaming multinationals. And in London every day we have demonstrations, they're blocking motorways, roads, streets, demonstrating at the big multinationals. But really the issue is not with them. The issue is with you and I that want to buy food or a piece of furniture for nothing. We want everything free. We want our product to be free. We don't want to pay expensive packaging or to go out and get it in a larger box. We want it in small boxes. So I think the problem I see in the world is that the blame is being shifted from us as ordinary people to the multinational. The multinational are only taking what you and I demand. They're not creating things for nothing. They've got no interest in it. They make money out of it. So any effort or any education or any campaign or any marketing or any training or any campaign should be focused on individuals to look at what they're doing, whether it's food or clothes or furniture. I live in London and we're a very wasteful nation or a country and city, and I walk around the streets and you'll see brand new toys people left out. I can see cupboards, I can see everything that are just being thrown away. And food is the biggest issue, because that is a very, very costly product to produce. To produce, a pear or a apple, imagine the effort, the money, the time, the natural wastage, the human wastage, the pesticides that go into it. And if I had a request from you people, is that you need to influence individuals through your whatever means you have to cut food waste and go around beating up multinationals. That's my
Thank-
$2 worth.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have our representative from Transhumanist Party USA, Professor David Schumacher. So, what you want to add for climate change and what's the transhumanist movement work for climate change?
Yes, hello, Sharif, and hello to everyone else. I've really enjoyed listening to what I've heard so far. But let me start with this. My focus in the Transhumanist Party is on applied innovation. So I'm interested in both parts of that. Innovation for sure, and we've heard some great innovative ideas here this morning, and applying those and making those work. And the Transhumanist Party is a minor political party here in the US. So we focus on policy, and we want policy. I want policy that applies these innovations and actually makes things happen. I'm always looking for a practical way forward. So I'm enlightened by what I heard of Industry 5.0. I am pleased with hearing about how practical aspects for practical plastic reduction in Malaysia. These are things that can actually make a difference versus just talking about the theory. We are past the time of preventing climate change. I think I heard that from everybody. We can see it. We can experience it in many different ways. Now's the time to start looking towards undoing what we've done. And there are risks to doing that, but there are greater risks to doing nothing. And then I think we've also got to look towards adapting. I don't personally see that we'll be able to maintain the status quo of what the planet was like over the last 100 years. I would love to be wrong, but I don't see that. So I think between undoing and adapting, I think that's our future. And these initiatives that I'm seeing from others are show me that there's people that have good plans, good interests to be able to help humans and all the other life that we have here on this planet be able to live into the future and still find a way to maintain these standards that we want. And this gets back to policy. How do we, I love the comment that I heard of focus on the individual, because focusing on the individual is what's going to drive business and politics forward to be able to put emphasis behind these programs so that we can get something concretely done, whether that is in the area of alternate forms of energy. One that I really like is onshore wind turbines, or whether that's convincing people that it's in their best interest to make dietary changes and so forth, so that we're less dependent on heavy herds of cattle and other grazing type of meats. These things all add, I think, that most people will agree to climate change. But it does start with the individual. It does start with the politics of driving our leaders forward. And so the real beginning starts with us. There's a lot more that I could say about this, but there's so many people that have such good ideas. I want to hear them as well. But let's keep focusing on a practical way forward to really get something done to make this planet habitable for ourselves and for all the other life that we care about. Thanks, Sharif.
Thank you, Professor David Schumacher. We have our Honorable Board of Advisor, Professor David Smith. He is CTO from ETT. Professor David Smith, what you want to add for today's discussion?
Sharif, excellent program today. I too love the comments about how the individual plays a key part in it. And it's not just the individual with where they touch, it's the individual, how they influence. The truth is climate change is a global challenge. It's not constrained to one country, one region, or even one hemisphere. It's really a global challenge. and that people are the drivers that can affect the change. They can affect the political changes, they can affect the changes in commercial companies, and they can affect the changes in education. Uh, a recent survey of looking at climate change in universities and colleges around the world came to a startling statistic that most of the science programs do not address climate change. Uh, and you begin to see that. Also, you see that governments have a key role in climate change, and they are not coordinated. To make a meaningful impact, they have to coordinate what they're doing with their neighbors, with the neighbors in their region, and with the rest of the world. Now, if you go back and look at the UN resolutions, they've been asking for that for decades, but we still do not see that in practice today. You see companies beginning to look at it. Time did a recent analysis of over 300 companies' financial documents to find out how concerned they are about climate change. And the vast majority say that's one of their initiatives, but they could not find actual programs in place in the corporate documents to support it. So we realize as a group of citizens on the earth that this is important, but we need to work collaboratively using our own group intelligence and taking the action required as individuals that can influence all these other bodies to have a meaningful impact on the future of climate change. And it touches all the elements, from the first presentation, looking at plastics, through food, through carbon, through petrochemicals, alternative sources. I personally believe that we will see more nuclear power come back. The recent scientific advances in fusion power, I find promising. But we need to look at others. We know that electric vehicles have an impact, but we also know that manufacturing the batteries have a negative impact to climate change. And how do we do that? We see the hope for hydrogen-powered vehicles. But the problems with hydrogen-powered vehicles is how do we get the logistics in place to be able to distribute hydrogen? Do we go to point-of-use generation, or do we have to build a whole new piping infrastructure to deal with hydrogen? So it's complex challenges that have to be viewed as a systems approach, and we have to do it on a global basis. But the individual is the key for making a difference in our future. So Sharif, thank you.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. We have our another board of advisor, Professor Rob. What you want to add for climate change discussion? Professor Rob?
Cannot hear you, Rob.
Yes. Professor Rob, you can, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's defaulting to the camera that's turned off. Climate change. So the big problem, I think, with climate change is it's a problem too big for any one country or any one company, and that's why it drops off the priority list for most of the firms. You can't. General Motors will have no material impact on climate change. The largest companies in the world individually won't have any material impact on climate change, and so why make it a priority? If we can't make a difference, then it's certainly important, but it's going to fall off on priorities against things where you can make a difference. The impacting climate change is a collective effort, and we know the sources of the chemicals and materials that causes climate change to largely come from China. They're about 50%, and the U.S. is about 25%, and the rest of the world is 25%. So So from the U.S.'s perspective, even though they're a significant portion of climate change, if China's most of it, why should they sacrifice, giving China an economic advantage by not sacrificing? And China's most of it, but their government structure allows for an authoritarian approach to problems, which means they're going to focus more on the economics rather than the climate. Though I should point out, China's actually doing some pretty impressive things with regard to mitigating their own output, but they kind of have to since they are creating most of it. I think as we started off focusing on pollution instead of climate change, it may be a better path, because on pollution you can make a material difference in your local environment, and pollution is to a large extent the cause of climate change, but it's also causing a lot of other things, polluting our streams and oceans, are wiping out some of the plant life that contributes to correcting climate change, and so pollution may be the easier path to going after the core problems of climate change. And it's just kind of interesting that we focus, particularly when we're talking about the petrochemical market, we focus on this climate change argument that is very hard to sustain individually. We're certainly seeing that in the United States. Gas prices go up. An administration that was solidly on fighting climate change has now opened up additional drilling capacity on the U.S. to produce more oil, because the economics overrode the need to fight, to battle climate change, and that's a very real problem in this battle. Is the economics work against the fight against climate change? The benefits are years into the future or may never arrive, because as a lot of people have mentioned, we've already spiraled beyond the point where we're going to be able to truly fight climate change. Now we need to move to mitigation. Okay, great. That now moves it from the top 10 to the top 50 in terms of trying to address the problem in the first place. Going in the wrong direction, I think, on every front. So the end result is, I think this focus, even though the plastics discussion was off topic, it could be brought back on topic by just pointing out that if cheap plastics are largely the result of the petrochemical market and the low cost of oil. If we simply raise the cost of oil so it was no longer economically viable, it would raise the overall cost of plastics. We'd have to go to different container types. I know when I was a child, we didn't have a lot of plastics. We mostly had glass, which was relatively easy to recycle. You could reuse the glass bottles for milk. You could reuse the glass containers for a lot of the materials that we had, and certainly the metal containers that things were delivered in. Cleaning solvents and the rest, those could also be just cleaned and reused. You don't necessarily have to crush them and recycle them. Just bring them back in, scrub the container, and refill it with whatever the material is. And we kind of do that today with water, not too effectively though. I noticed that the local market has stopped stocking large bottles of spring water. Instead, you're supposed to bring in your own bottle and fill it at the market. Though the cause wasn't to reduce plastics. The cause was they can't get the bottles of water in, and so they can't get the stock, and the only way they can sell water is selling in bulk. But that means that it points to the solution. You make plastics expensive enough, and people will stop using them, and that will reduce plastic pollution. And because plastics come from petrochemicals, if the source of that cost increase is the cost of petrochemicals, then you're reducing the accessibility to petrochemicals, and you're directly addressing petrochemical-driven climate change. Now, we have other issues that may ironically kind of solve themselves. The amount of plastics that are going into the ocean and going into our food sources are resulting in a massive increase in plastics in our bodies, which is by any measure incredibly unhealthy. To address that, the industry is starting partially to address that, partially to address other things like the humanity of harvesting animals in large quantities, especially now that we're finding a lot of them are intelligent, is to go to manufactured meats. Well, manufactured meats have a number of advantages, particularly when you talk about steak. The first thing to address was cow flesh. And cows are a big contributor to climate change through methane gas. And plus, if you've ever watched how cows are harvested, it is not. I mean, it'll take you off meat for a long while. It is a very cruel and, in my opinion, inhumane process. And I was raised on a ranch. So going to manufactured meats gets the plastics out of our diet, reduces our need to harvest cows, which is inhumane to begin with, and reduces the secondary methane cause driving climate change. And once again, we move forward. We're not moving by fighting climate change. We're moving forward by addressing the secondary problem of pollution and polluting our food sources. So I wonder if our focus shouldn't be on those things that pollute our environment and create and raise the priority on items that we're addressing on those things that also cause climate change. And thus we start addressing the climate change problem by addressing problems that we can make a material difference with. And I believe on pollution, that's a much better path to make a material difference. And it's a higher priority. If we look at companies like HP, Lenovo, Dell, they've gone to highly recyclable packaging. They've gone to ocean-borne plastics being used in their products. They're pulling the plastics out of the ocean or keeping the plastics from going in the ocean and putting them in the products. They still need to get to 360 recycling because some of these plastics are eventually making it into landfills. But the fact of the matter is the process is reducing the plastics that are going into our into places that are compromising our food sources and creating and at least mitigating that aspect of the problem. In the end, for climate change, it has to be a global effort if we're going to focus on climate change. But if we focus on pollution first, we might be able to get there sideways and solve the problem much more effectively. And we stop this kind of separation of efforts because we've got people focused on pollution, we've got people focused on climate change. They're diluting each other's efforts by not being together on trying to solve similar problems. And it's a lot of the noise that we've got in here that I think is a lot of the issue, is this lack of focus. At any climate change event, you might have 20 different groups proposing 20 different things to solve. Actually, 20 is probably a way too small number. The last survey I saw, numbers indicated quite a bit higher. And they're not really each one has their own source. Each one has their own focus. Each focus may not be contradictory, but it's not supportive either. So if we can collectively focus on a problem, we can solve it. But as we dilute our efforts and as we focus on the big issue that even the largest companies, and with the exception of China, the largest countries don't feel comfortable going after, I think we can actually make progress by kind of sneaking up on the problem as opposed to just talking about it and whining about it, but to a large extent not doing anything really material to solve it. So I think it's an issue of focus. I think it's an issue of focusing on the wrong thing. And I think we need to drill down on those things where we can make a very real difference. And back to the original speaker, plastics is one of the areas where we can make a real difference and really kind of think about not polluting our food sources, because really none of us want to die of cancer. And plastics have been material connected to cancer deaths. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I've had a large number of family members die or be crippled by cancer, and it's not pleasant. And I think that's an argument that we can sustain.
Thank you, Professor Rob. We have our other speakers, Professor Ching and Professor Aimee. Professor Ching, he is our partner for developing the project Next New World. Professor Ching, what you want to add for climate change discussion?
Yes. Well, I'm glad to see new face, and I'm glad to see Dr. Rajay and Dr. Rana are here. And also, it's interesting that my friend Helen Liu was presented in one of the slides of Dr. Rajay. And she was one of my friends who does climate change. Yeah, anyway, I think this the problem of climate change is an open-ended problem with unlimited complexity. So the diversified views should be combined into one system. And I would suggest our infinite spreadsheet for climate valuation to ultimately evaluate the consequences of climate change. And also, I would suggest fuzzy AI for solving this problem with unlimited complexity. And my friend is also doing the carbon tax. She's the person who drafted the carbon tax law. If you want to check out, and the person is my friend and a student of Gerald de Brue. Gerald de Brue is the person who started the theory of value discussion. So there's this basically the problem is climate change versus economic progress. So and the carbon cycle is an instability where the global warming will allow the atmosphere to absorb more carbon dioxide, which in turn will increase more global warming. And a few more factors, there is an 11-year cycle of the solar flare when the magnetic field on the sun switches. And you can expect also disruption of electronic equipment every 11 years. And also the range of tolerance for global warming is another 2 degrees. Okay, so we have two more degrees to go before disaster hit. And another thing we might notice as a fact is that the Earth is entering into an ice age. So ultimately, there will be a comparison between the ice age versus global warming. So it's not, we need some system to decide whether global warming is good or bad first. And this is a problem in social science, in pol science actually. And it's an open-ended problem, as I said before. Basically, I would say there are 2 parts to the infinite spreadsheet when you calculate. The first part is man-made. The second part is natural. So I have given some example of the natural and man-made. And we need to take all this into consideration, especially the United Nations, that they should look into. And as a final point, as aliens, humans need to modify or create the climate on Mars and on the moon. Okay. We are the aliens when we go to the Mars. Okay. The climate change modification on Mars is far more difficult than that on Earth. We have to start from the beginning. So this is really the process of self-creation, which started the creation of the entire living system. And this technology and this concern is really basically what we're dealing with. Sooner or later we have to make choice of global warming or global cooling. It's not just one-way street. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. We have our own another respectable professor from Malaysia, Professor Aimi Zulhazmi. Professor, what you want to add for climate change, and if you want to share some of your view from Asia Pacific, from Malaysia, it will be helpful for our global speakers.
Thank you, Sharif, for the invitation. Hi, guys. I'm a first timer here. Your colleagues. Good to see all of you from all over the world. It's almost 11 o'clock in Malaysia now, in Kuala Lumpur. I'm from KL. I'm from University Kuala Lumpur. Just a bit of background before I comment on that is because the moment that Sharif told me about the topic, it gave me a big interest to participate, and contribute, because what I'm doing, I'm teaching Islamic finance in Malaysia, and I'm also an economic analyst, and I'm providing a lot of analysis on the newspapers and the media in Malaysia, like in the TV and radio as well, if there is any particular area. And what concerns me is I've been traveling to other countries inside Malaysia, like Indonesia and China, and as well as Indochina, like Vietnam, especially Cambodia. And when we talk about climate change, and it's funny when I went to Phnom Penh in 2019, and people still using leaded fuel, and in fact, for their, if you know, the tuk tuk, the small, the small tricycles, they use kerosene. They use kerosene to run. So the moment you that if you don't cover yourself, next 5 minutes your face will turn black. Yeah, because of the carbon. Um, the thing is, my point is that when we go to third world countries, because all my colleagues has been excellent pointing out all the issues. The issue when we talk about climate change, the people that is talking about their daily survival. You know, how they're going to get money and their income, and they would not care about very much about climate, and they go and basically open up new plantation areas, damage the environment, whatnot. But that is still a skill that is still manageable. What happened is that the commercialization that was brought about by the government through the foreign investors basically is the area that has basically provide an extreme measures to the damage to the environment. It happened in Malaysia. When we have a lot of foreign investors coming in, some areas because they have bauxite, like in east coast of Malaysia, bauxite, the whole plantation of palm oil was removed, and then they keep moving all the soils, and then the people around that was, they can't live around it, and all those in the name of getting the foreign investment, into the country. So climate change, as all my colleagues has basically described, I would not disagree totally. Yeah, but I would suggest that now we talk about ESG. Yeah, we already knows about ESG, and I think it's about time we need to have a ranking by country on ESG, and this ESG will basically help in the bringing investment. You're talking about bringing foreign investment into the country, but just like indicator like corruption index, whatever the index we have, we may need to have like ESG index by country. So that's my thought immediately when I heard from my excellent colleagues here, on the topic today. Yeah, that's a bit from me. Yeah, over to Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor. We have to go for the concluding remarks for today's, and this is excellent discussion because we get views, real life project informations, and the startup ecosystem information from Asia Pacific, from North America, and from Europe. That is the way actually World Talent Economy Forum, we actually trying to minimize the gap in between developed world and developing worlds with the contribution of modern science, engineering, and technology. And every day we arrange this kind of dialogue because through the open dialogue, maybe we can go for more collaborations, more partnerships, and we can develop next new world. So for the concluding remarks, first I request Mr. Walker. Can you unmute, please?
It's a fascinating conversation. Some very, very talented people with vast experience. I mean, I think what we have is we have such a diverse opinion. There are people that are looking at from the spectrum of people from grassroots right up to industry and between. And we talked about pollution versus, climate change. I think all those issues are all equally important. I just would like to conclude that I think we also tend to agree there's a lot of effort required to educate, to inform, and to let people know that individuality matters in this whole thing. It's my need to buy cheap furniture that causes climate change, or my need to buy papaya 12 months in a year that causes climate change living in London. And unless we all individually change, it becomes an academic exercise, the whole thing. So, we all need to, in our own fields, our own spheres of work, try to convince that the individual matters, and let then individual industry drive each other. Remember, industry is only driven by consumers. Industry doesn't create anything if it wasn't a consumer demand or there is some profit in it. So, you know, all these things matter, but I'm very honored and very privileged to be among such distinguished people, and I hope we can have further discussions and so forth. And one last thing is that I think there's a lot the Western, the modern developed world can learn from the developing world. The developing world has been amazing in conserving things, in managing pollution, in sustainability, and so forth. So there's much more that I'm sure those that are in the third world that can teach the West on how to look after this planet. I see it in rural parts of Africa and Asia, where a family does not produce any waste. Everything is used and recycled. You know, the goats eat the leftovers. This happens. So there's a lot that the third world can teach the West. But I think it is a collaborative exercise. We are in one planet. We can't separate each other. Borders are man-made. The planet is not border. It's a borderless world. But you know, I think we've got a great team here, and sure that they can influence the world in a good way. And I'm very honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Dr. Raja, what's your concluding remarks for today's dialogue?
I guess I think interestingly the area of vulnerability, right? When we talk about the future, so it depends not only on the climate change, right, but also on the development pathway. So a lot of things we have discussed here, maybe to take a look on how the assessment is going to work on, right, project impacts of climate change could be greatly due to the choice of the future. When we talk about economic, when we talk about social development pathway, right? So a lot of new research on these nature potential impacts could allow a lot of differences in regional, what they call population, income, technological development. I've seen this, our friend here, the LinkedIn for Michael, rather interesting follower that you have, right? When you talk about this industry 5.0. So maybe some connectivity towards the technological development is going to be underway, right? So this is the alternative scenarios. So maybe we can sense from that, it is clear that development can be sort of like very strong determinant, you know, of vulnerability to the climate change. So to illustrate all this, right, even in Malaysia, we have a risk of flooding, yeah, under different assumptions of a lot of socio-economic development, because the weather is so unpredictable, and even in some part of the world, yeah, when we talk about the climate change, so vulnerable, yeah, you see, perhaps maybe to look at those measurement, the impact, yeah, to take view, so that we can identify and perhaps mitigate all those activity, right? So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you very much. And thank you for having
Thank
me
you.
also.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor, for joining today's session. Mr. Michael Rada, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
I would like to thank all, and just would like to say that Industry 5.0 is not a concept, it's 9 years old. Generally, it's 7 years old, but the principles are implemented for 9 years. But I would like, instead of delivering a final keynote, let me show you something, okay? I will show you, here is a plastic. It's a piece of a bag, okay? This is what you see in here is the first water, according to the producer, is the full water-soluble plastic, okay? Look how it will work when I put boiling water over it. It generally, almost immediately, sorry, I will take my knife. You see, it's generally just the color inside, so the ink. Why I'm showing you that? The producer says that it's fully water-soluble plastic. We get finances, he get funding, he get a lot of things. I asked him to send me a bag to test it here in my lab. I have nothing except of a kettle and small bottles. I tested. At the end, I realized that this water-soluble plastic still, there is quite a lot of remains which remain in the water, and if the water evaporate, there is still the plastic, and it's not just a harmful piece of plastic which you would like to eat. There are pieces which are really strong. And despite of that, there exist several studies, scientific studies, that this material is completely harmful. So I just showed you how greenwashing works. Producer sent these because he never thought I will make the test. So we have to be very careful about this stuff, very careful. And if you will see my office, every single piece of furniture I made with my hand from obsolete material in factories, every single one, except of my chair because of my broken back. And I prove with 1 million metric tons that we can prevent the ways happen. That's the case. And just now, as you see, it is there, but I know that inside of it is this layer, which will, if I will drink it, and they drink it even, this will stay in my body. And this will stay in water, in animals, everywhere. I will have on Thursday, I will have a discussion with the chief engineer of the company generally. So to ask him very unpleasant questions. But I would like to say, let's be careful. And what I love, what resonates here, it was said that we have to learn from people in, let's call it, underdeveloped countries. They are not underdeveloped at all. They don't have, for example, word for war because they don't need it. They don't have prisons. They don't need money. They are much more advanced. And Industry 5.0, there is only one role model. It's nature, because nature does not waste. And we are part of the nature. On my business card is only one title, human. And even right now, as I'm saying that, I have a goosebumps on my skin, and there was a president. It's not important. Let's wake up human in humans. This will help the climate. This will help to reduce the impact, the negative impact of our work and of our life. And one more comment. Please don't believe that it's only produce what is needed. It's not true. If you go to factories, you will see overproduction in such a scale because the banks do not ask whether you have sold it. They ask whether you produce it. So market demand, it's a very different number than the real demand. So that's just a final comment from me, and I'm happy you can see it. Unfortunately, it's not as it was presented. So still it's dangerous, and I think even more dangerous than before. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Michael Rada. World Talent Economy Forum also focus on people. Our major priority is people because, yes, this world more focus on technology and investment, but in some point we forget about human. So 2 years before when I started this talent economy in online, because previously we take a lot of offline initiative and successfully we make very, very good organizations. We focus on human because human who invent the technology, human who actually invest on business. So definitely we have to more careful about human, and definitely we are against any kind of war. What happening in Ukraine, what happening in Middle East, what happened in Pakistan or Afghanistan or in Africa, we are against it. We need to be more careful about human. That is our objective. And I believe people from 100 different countries, more than 300 largest corporations, Ivy League university and largest university from developing world, different policy making institutions, prime minister office, public private partnership, everybody believe that talent economy is the future, and we need to more focus on human progressions. So that's why everyone, those who join, they are the owner of this organization, and they can contribute through World Talent Economy Forum around the world. Professor David Schumacher, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Thank you to everyone. I learned something from everyone here today. One of the things I come away convinced with is that we all want to see change. We all want to move the needle, if you will, in the right direction. And having said that, I think it's important how we advocate for climate change. I think that we need to focus on opportunity, not problems. Problems has a negative connotation to it, and I know that when I start talking to people about problems, their mind drifts elsewhere. But when I talk about opportunities, something they can do, something they can be a part of, something they can benefit from, I can maintain their interest. So for me, that's focusing on solutions to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And I can make those very exciting to myself and hopefully those around me. But in doing so, it needs to be, as someone said, bigger than one person, bigger than one country, bigger than companies. So we need to engage with others that have that similar passion to ourselves. So wherever we find ourselves, in academia, politics, business, whatever that might be, we need to work with those people along with our passion so that we can incorporate allies, grow the movement, maintain the energy. Let's keep the positive out front. That doesn't mean to ignore the problems, but what good entrepreneurs do, and I've heard some good entrepreneurial talk here this morning, what good entrepreneurs do is they see problems as opportunities, and then they present and work for solutions. Let's be an entrepreneur for remedying climate change. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Professor David Schumacher. Professor David Smith.
Second, the motion on entrepreneurship is a way to address this problem. And it is one that hits back where we were talking before about the importance of empowering the individual and empowering the individual to take change on many different areas. I've been fortunate in my career to be able to address many grand challenges and help identify them and put plans and roadmaps in place to deal with them. We have the UN report, we have other reports coming out, but one of the things we're lacking in this area is actually a grand challenge approach to do a global roadmap to address climate change that breaks down what are the key capabilities needed, not just overall, which the UN report does, but begins to target areas, begins to put action plans in place that is not just a global action plan, but looks at segments and things before. When I've targeted this type of wicked problem roadmap in industries and in large organizations, they tend to up the probability of success. This grand challenge of climate change is a very wicked problem. And it's one that we need to go outside our norm to put in place plans to solve. And time is getting short. So Sharif, thank you.
Thank you. Professor Rob, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, I think as I started off, I think the issue with climate change is the problem is simply too large for any single entity. To address climate change as a direct problem, it requires a worldwide effort. And as we've seen so far, the worldwide efforts have been not only not particularly helpful, pretty much all the metrics are going on the wrong way. A lot of promises to do things out a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, but not a lot of activity in the present tense. And this war in Ukraine is driving a lot of the metrics even more aggressively in the wrong direction. I think the effort needs to become much more targeted, and I think the country effort should be more on mitigation. It makes no sense, for instance, to be building wooden houses where forest fires are common. It makes no sense to be building houses at ground level where floods are common. It makes no sense to build homes in areas where hurricanes and tornadoes exist that haven't been hardened against hurricanes and tornadoes. I mean, we're going to have climate change. We need to start building like we understand it's coming. We're not the dinosaurs. We can actually see this problem emerging, and we can at least mitigate the individual effects. And to address climate change, government should be supporting those things that directly and adversely impact global warming. Let's stop climate change. Let's talk about global warming, because that's really the fact. We've gone to climate change because winter is cold and summer is hot. It's just that summers are getting hotter and winters are getting warmer. So in the end, what governments can do is start promoting activities and stop funding and subsidizing activities that are the causes. I do not understand why we're still subsidizing the petrochemical industry. It makes gas prices low, but if you're paying for the gas with your taxes, not really. And the fact is even though it looks like we're paying far less for gas in the United States than Europe, since part of our taxes are going to pay for gas, it means that cost we're still paying it. It's just hidden from us. So fixing that so the costs are directly tied to the material would go an awful long way to addressing our really bad behavior, and then having government subsidize things like energy storage, like artificial meats, and these industries, solar, or even better yet, geothermal, which is much more effective, and then bring nuclear back. But let's work on the storage problem, because that's the one dirty thing we don't talk about in nuclear, is we really haven't solved the storage problem. Certainly not in the U.S. The countries have done a better job, but in the end, we're really not. Honestly, I think that this entire focus on climate change for a lot of people is more rhetoric than practicality. It's statements of support without much underneath in terms of making progress. And countries could do a lot in looking at what they subsidize, what they tax, and how the costs flow through to the consumer to assure that the costs of climate change are carried forward in the price, and that will change behavior. But as long as gas is relatively cheap, people are going to continue to use it. And as long as electricity can't be properly stored, it's going to be a problem. I was just on a forum the other day and talking about somebody that's bought a new electric car. Well, they're going to have to keep their gas car to drive distance. Well, the reason they have to keep their gas car to drive distance is because we don't have enough level 3 charging stations out there. And let's be clear, battery technology development stalled for almost 40 years. If we go back to the early part of the last century, at one point, about a third of the automobiles were electrics, and we wiped them all out. So just showing the practical aspect of government, rather than government subsidizing the most powerful industries, government needs to subsidize those things that help the health and well-being of their citizens, and the citizens have to come first. And if we can fix that one problem, we will solve an awful lot of things, including pollution and climate change, that we're not making progress on today. But it's this lack of focus and this inordinate amount of government funding going in the wrong direction that we have to solve before we can even make a dent in climate change. And pollution is at the heart of this. And if we don't get our heads on straight, we're gonna be talking about this as our houses flood, get blown away, or we end up living in mountain caves in Colorado. Actually, Colorado's burning at the moment, so maybe that's not a great state. So in the end, if we don't come together and start addressing this stuff, the next generation is screwed. And that's again part of the problem, is because a lot of the power still resides with people that figure they're going to be dead before this hits. And so, really, why should they be concerned? Fixing this really requires rethinking what we're doing at a very high level and at a very low level. And until we all get on board, I'm just not convinced we're going to make enough progress.
Thank you, Professor Rob. Professor Aimi, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Okay, mine is simple. this topic has been discussed at length at all levels, um, and to make it difficult, since the world is still recovering from the pandemic of COVID-19, a lot of countries focusing about the people, um, their survivability, especially in the third world countries. They may put less priority on climate issues, as we discussed now. So that can be an obstacle. However, we need a more coerced focus from the UN and any bodies, yeah, at the global level, to push this thing throughout all the countries. Hopefully, before uh, not another climate disaster happen to our beautiful planet. Because we have no place to go. We cannot go to Mars. Moon is inhabited. So we have to do something to stop all this plastics issues. We talk about plastics is polyethylene, is from petroleum. We still rely on hydrocarbons to provide. Still, hydrocarbon is the biggest energy contributors to the world, and this is a major issue. And then I know that probably the current U.S. president is more towards the green energy rather than the previous president, so that helps a bit. But we need some more serious, somebody with a stick actually to push this thing through. So we need basically a more cost or effort, more focused effort at the global level at the moment. And I can't see that's happening currently because everybody is focusing about inflation, high inflation rates, survivability, economy is collapsing, etc., etc. So we need to do something about that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I
Thank
do
you.
enjoy this session tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Professor Ching, what's your concluding remarks for today?
As a nuclear engineer by training, I've been called back into study the both the fission reactor and the fusion reactor, and I predict the nuclear energy will be a major part of our climate strategy in the future, because the energy from the earth on earth are all from the sun. Okay, the only way to really change the temperature of the earth is by countering nuclear energy with nuclear energy. Okay, and I look at the nuclear fission reactor, they seem to start to become more and more safe. And somebody claimed, Finland claimed they have solved the problem of waste storage. So that's my prediction. And also, my friend Kenneth Arrow said that his life priorities were number one, health; number two, climate change; number three, his serial value. So if you think climate change is the second priority, that's good enough for me. He's an extremely rigorous thinker. And also my friend Milton Friedman is against the environmental policies. So there's opposite views, and I would be on the side of Arrow than Friedman. In any case, I hope, I already written to my friends in this. Also, Dr. Rana should also looking to implement the infinite spreadsheet into the UN climate change policy. Okay, so put everything together. We know where we have all the inputs. Okay, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? But we need to put them together and get an output. Okay, I would suggest the output should be from the infinite spreadsheet. Yeah, thank you for giving me a chance to promote my idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Churchill, are you with me? Okay. Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
yes. How are you?
Yes, we are discussing on
Yes,
climate change. And what's your remarks, like concluding remarks for today's session?
yes. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for all your provisions and ideas. But my opinion, in brief, is that it is the biggest challenge we are facing for the future. It is by no means trivial that we should be dealing with it, and perhaps the best defense is to play a game of offense. So in this case, I would think that as humans, we must band together the people who are most affected and the people who are mostly on the global south to be able to convince the global north that behavior change is imminent, and whether we are forced to adapt as resilient beings as we are, or whether we are forced to change the ways of our energy production and livelihood, it doesn't matter. We must do proactively what we best can in order to address climate change. Climate change has been with us, of course, for a long time. However, now our best estimate at 1.8 degrees of warming, according to the IPCC, leaves us at no doubt that the game is up. So my view is that it is not up to the government any longer, but it is up to the people. And what we see as people's action
Hello, Dr. Churchill. I cannot hear you. Sorry, I think he has internet problem.
Dr. Churchill, you're breaking up so badly we can't understand you.
Okay, Dr. Churchill, you can join next session. I think you have internet problem. That's why your communication is breaking. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. This is an excellent discussion. Climate change is real. All of your contribution is really valuable for global humanity. I request all of our audience, please share our content with your government, corporation, and academy. And those who join as the speakers, you are extremely valuable for World Talent Economy Forum. And I know everyone is valuable and everyone is influential. You have your friends and family. You can utilize World Talent Economy Forum content. We have 528 content. Many people from around the world, they share their view, their opinion, their real life project with World Talent Economy Forum. Your contributions will change humanity. Thank you, Mr. Michael Rada, Professor David Schumacher, Professor Raja for your joining, Professor Ching, Professor Aimi, Professor Rob, and Dr. Churchill for joining World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you, bye-bye, and take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.